Welcome to our presentation titled Testing in the Digital Transformation Age, featuring Jonathan Wright and Julie Gardner with Hitachi and Michaela Fries with Oracle. I'm your host, Beth Romanek. Before we begin, I'd like to explain how to participate in today's event. You'll be watching streaming video and content. To optimize bandwidth, please close any unnecessary applications you have running in the background. You'll notice a number of widgets at the bottom of your console. Here, you can view the speaker's bios and presentation abstract. Also, please send us your feedback about the presentation via our short 4-question survey. To submit a question, use the moderated chat function. We'll answer any technical questions within the chat, and we'll try to get to your questions at the end of the presentation during a Q&A. And now, Julie, Jonathan, and Mikhail are taking the stage.
Good afternoon and welcome to our technical vendor session. My name is Julie Gardner of Hitachi Consulting, and I'd also just like to welcome our virtual conference attendees, wherever you may be, whatever the time zone. Much appreciated for you to actually join us. This morning, both Dan and Jason were talking about open innovation and challenging what we do and changing the way that we actually do things to make ourselves better in our projects. And this fits in rather nicely with our open innovation and the strategic partnership that we have between Oracle and Hitachi. Our session is talking about testing in the digital transformation age. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mikhail from Oracle.
Thank you, Julie. So, digital really changes everything. It changes the way that users expect systems or applications to work. It changes what the experience should be for the users as well. The users of today, they really want to have availability 24/7. They want to have instant real-time fulfillment. They want to have social functionalities in the same way as they have privately using Facebook or other social media functions. They want to have that in a business as well. They want to be able to have personalized services, and they want to be able to use any kind of device accessing these systems or applications or whatever it might be. Now, this, of course, gives a lot of new opportunities in emerging markets or whenever you're building anything new to really make sure that you satisfy these customers and demands and the requirements that they have. But on the other hand, if you look at the IT infrastructure in many organizations today, they're not really able to deliver that because they're simply not set up in order to meet those expectations or challenges. And this kind of creates disruption, and this is something that gives opportunities and challenges for these companies. I'm going to talk a little bit more about these disruptions and what it really means. I'm going to try to paint a picture for you. So let's go back about 300 years and start looking at a monopoly, basically. I'm talking about the London taxi operations. Well, it wasn't called taxi back then, but they did use horse and carriage, and they have been in this market space for 300 years without any kind of competition. Now, when you look at this, the taxi business in London, what you have to do in order to be part of this is basically you have to study the maps of London for something around 2 to 4 years in order to know all of the streets in London, to take the customer from point A to point B. You have to take orals and written exams, and you have to pay fees in order to get those exams done. Then you have to purchase a vehicle. You have to purchase a meter and get that meter installed in your vehicle. And then, of course, everything is run by a licensed agency, basically collecting fees for you in order to be able to drive this cab. Now, this is, of course, a huge obstacle or barrier if someone wants to enter that market space. But hey, they've been doing this for 300 years, so, they can do it. Now, something interesting happened not too long ago. What's my clicker? Oh, there we go. Uber enters the market. So what is Uber? Well, Uber is a ride-sharing app, basically. So you have your smartphone, you download the app, and you can order taxi services whenever you want. You don't have to go through, central dispatch, anything like that. And the Uber drivers, they don't have to go through the same kind of licensing process as the normal taxi drivers in London. All they need to have is a driver's license, they have to have a car, they need to have an insurance, and they need to have a background check. That's all they need. And the customers, of course, found this very interesting. Now, as a result of this, there was a big demonstration, protest on Trafalgar Square, where the taxi business was basically saying, hey, you have to put new laws in place to forbid companies like Uber to compete with us. Because this is our market. This is how we've been doing business for 300 years. And it did have a good impact, this big, rally that they had, for Uber, that is. So the application that Uber had got an increased download of 850% as a result of that. And Uber now is about 4 years old as a company, and they are valued at a value of $40 billion. They are operating in about 42 countries and expanding. Now, this is disruption in any case. It's, big impact on the taxi business in the UK, in London specifically in this case, but also for the rest of the world. Now, Uber is, from my point of view, probably not, valued because of the taxi business alone, but from what could be the next thing. What if the disruption continues and Uber starts to go into other market segments? Maybe they are starting to do delivery of packages, something that you purchase online. They do the last mile distribution of these, cutting away companies like FedEx, UPS, and others. So I think this is just the starting point for Uber and those businesses. And this is really the challenge then. If you as an organization are not able to keep up evolving with your customers and your market, then you're going to be obsolete. Look at the iPhone when that was introduced into the market. So we had these kind of smartphones, and some of these players are not existing on the market anymore because of that. So you have to keep up with the market and making sure that whatever the market and your customers want to have, follow that in order to not become obsolete. So all these disruptions basically are going to force a digital transformation for companies that are not evolving with the market and the customers. So basically something from the outside is forcing them to really do something dramatically drastic in order to keep being in the business. It's only considered to be a transformation if this is triggered from outside forces and it's really noticeable on the outside. The problem with the transformation, of course, is that it's a big project. It's really big, costly, and risky. So, Jonathan.
No, absolutely. I think that's a great kind of intro there. Thank you, Mikhail, and welcome to everyone on the virtual conference. So I'd like to talk about this from a testing perspective. I recently joined Hitachi, and one of the first things I really learned is that we test a lot of stuff, from trains to smart cities. I think this is a great example right here around one of the projects we're actually working in Copenhagen, not for the Copenhagen Clean Cluster. So this is quite close to my heart right now. And we're talking about IoT. I know this, I'm hoping with the rest of this event, we'll be going through and people will be covering this off as an interesting new area for testing. But I think we talk about testing, we talk about challenges. This is definitely a challenge. It's disruptive, absolutely. But we're sat there talking, even between the relationships between Oracle, about how do we get to test the IoT, how do we actually provide confidence around the actual solutions that we deliver when we're actually involved in this as a cultural thing now. Actually, people of Copenhagen are very passionate about becoming clean and carbon neutral. So let me talk about this, because obviously there's all sorts of stuff, and we do, Hitachi as a company do water purification plants, we do smart hubs, power. It's all starting to connect. And that ramp up from, I think, 250 million machine-to-machine communications is at a much faster rate than actually mobile ever was. So this is actually a new challenge, and the predictions, especially for Forrester, over the next 5 years are humongous in comparison to wearables or all the other disruptive technologies that we're seeing through. But I kind of say to myself, and I like to keep things a bit relevant, stuff that's actually happened. And so I've included the last 2 tweets that I sent to this gentleman here over the weekend. So I was actually, the first one on the left-hand side, I was actually at MGM for the fight and went to the toilets, which is, absolutely necessary, and the taps wouldn't work. And I was kind of thinking, well, this is a bit strange. There's no sensor. There's a little screen on the top. And I noticed, obviously, from my background, that actually it was trying to boot up. It had a little MAC address in the corner. And everyone in the toilets, this was the first experience for us men, actually, there was a queue out of the door. It was fine. It was extremely busy, and we couldn't wash our hands. And eventually the tap booted up, and we were able to hit the button which said hot, soapy, whatever it was. Very, very cool, but at the same time, did anyone performance test that? Did anyone expect those kind of volumes of such a large fight of 20,000 people attending the MGM Grand? It's an absolute huge thing. And equally, we're talking about these disruptive markets. We're talking about things like wearables. Obviously, the recent introduction of the Apple Watch, and we've actually got an example later on where we've actually done some testing around this, literally on the 27th of last month, where the day it was launched, a couple of hours later, we were actually running tests against that platform. But also on the right-hand side, I checked into the hotel, and the first thing I noticed was actually, you could have an option, if you had a Samsung watch like this gentleman's got, to actually allow you to wirelessly enter into the room. Actually control the, open the curtains, change the lighting. There's all those products out there like Philips Hue and etc., which are starting to connect in the household, but this is now actually moving into our everyday life. So this is a new challenge. And, I see these challenges, and we talked about the transformation just then, about actually it's only called transformation as it's triggered, but I think most companies are now looking at this, especially when they start thinking about digital enterprise and what does that actually mean to us as an organization, and that change and associated testing effort. What the way the industry is looking at, especially around Gartner, as you see the quote at the bottom, is calling something called the move from core IT to fluid IT. And that transformation effort is to move that flow. Now, not everything's suitable for that, as I'll go on to later on, but really, that's the transformation. Going from core IT, which is what you see on the left, which is, we've all talked about data centers. We know, we all understand the landscape and the challenges that we currently got in the market. We understand all the new emerging technologies, the agile, practices that are coming to make us think differently, continuous delivery, continuous deployment, all these new challenges, DevOps, test ops. All that new way of thinking is actually us embracing the digital enterprise blueprint and how we actually can go into an organization which is able to react to that. And like I said, not everything's suitable for this journey. I think this is the whole thing. We need to work out and work together as an industry to understand how and what should be actually moved into a digital landscape.
Maybe we should explain this slide as well. This is a nuclear plant.
Well, actually, I think we'll explain it even more in the sense that this is actually a Hitachi nuclear plant. So we're actually building 2 of these at the moment as part of a program as Hitachi is a global organization. And I'm actually doing the testing around this at the moment. So part of that, the first one was actually security testing, as you'd expect. We're talking about building the plans, the schematics for actually how they build nuclear plants out in the UK. But equally, the next steps are mobile testing, moving devices from one room to the other. They don't want screens on the wall that could go wrong. They want people to have devices that they go into proximity of areas, geo-based, and actually test that. So, part of this is this IoT environment. We've even got for nuclear power, we're actually starting to get new challenges and testing, being involved in those testing challenges, which I think is, awesome. It is awesome, yeah. That's the easy way to do that one. But equally, I think, part of that awesomeness, which we've just been kind of categorized, it's not just about disruptors. No. And I think this is what we've got to think about. And part of that is that, yes, we actually looked at test drones for this, so actually flying drones around the site. And the laws change. The laws change in that how you can fly a test drone. My friend Ray, who I saw at the last weekend in Portland, he's got a drone, but he's allowed to fly it over here. We have to get a drone license. As a tester, I would have to go through a drone license to be able to fly a drone around to actually test the different devices in the nuclear area. So, part of these are real challenges, real wearables. We're all going to be involved in this. And yes, they are disruptors, but really what we're focusing on, especially in this conversation, is really that journey from core IT, which you see on the far left, which is really the physical data centers, the stuff we've been doing for the last few decades around, going to these new models. And, everyone's been talking about X as a service. This has been something on everyone's mind for the last 5 years, cloud, all these technologies. Really is how we take you on that journey together to become digital at the center of your heart, of the business. And I think that's really important because that is a big change for companies because they don't know their business. They don't know it from a digital blueprint point of view.
Exactly, and how to really make use of cloud, on-premise, and all of that mixed together.
Oh, absolutely. And so what I'm going to do is hand you back over to Michaela. I think this is a quite big question, is what does it actually mean for businesses?
Well, the business will, of course, since it is a transformation, that's what we are talking about, a transformation means that it will be a totally rewrap of everything. It will be a re-envisioning of the customer's experience. What does the customer expect from us? How can we provide that? It will be how do we want to operate? How do we want to run our processes? All the different functions within the organization or with partners, how can we work with them together? How can we have an openness between systems so that they can work together for the user experience and the user expectations, I guess, that the user have. So we need to look at functions within the company and within partner organizations and define really how should they now work, because it will most likely be a lot different from how it used to be. And this covers everything. There's nothing that is going to be untouched except for the nuclear plant. And maybe one or two things more.
Sure.
So, but, Jonathan, what does this mean for testing?
Well, this is the thing which I think we need to go through this next slide and kind of push through some of the key challenges. I think for everyone who's out there listening at the moment, I think that's the back of the question. We've kind of introduced digital enterprise and the disruption around there.
Okay, so should we get started with that?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, cool. So we'll do that. So when we look at the challenges for testing, it's really, these projects are huge. They're gigantic. So the complexity, of course, is also going to be on that scale. So you really need to look at, what kind of methodology do you want to use for your test approach? What kind of systems or applications do you have there? How do you want to work with them together? And you can't really just test application A and application B siloed, but you have to test the whole system together as one operating unit, because that is what it's going to be at the end of the day. And Julie has been talking about this in a lot of previous, sessions that she has been dealing with. So, if you want to have more on that, just go up to Julie and she will be happy to talk you through that.
Mikhail, I think there's a great quote actually from Julie from STAREast, which was around, actually you can't expect these ecosystems to be tested in anything but isolation. And I think that's a really important point, especially when you're talking about openness, is really some of these vendors that may be closed don't work together. They might test their product in isolation, but they don't test it with Salesforce, with all the new platforms that are coming out. And that's the challenge today.
That is definitely the challenge. And, there's going to be so many integration points. How can you work with that? And then, of course, very important thing that, we talked about yesterday, I think, a little bit more intensively. You have to really start with the testing early. And I know this is something that everyone says, you have to start early, you have to do that. But, what does it mean? How can you do that? Is there anything specifically that can help you on that journey? Because you have to be able to start with automation even before you have the application maybe even.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And that's a challenge. And then, of course, we all have the problem with, what about environments? How can we do the testing? Not everyone is lucky enough to have a test environment that is, has the same components as the production environment, or even, the ones that are extremely lucky that has a one-to-one environment, that's almost never going to happen. I've seen that once or twice. And then, one of my favorites, production data. How can you do testing without having production-style data? That's almost impossible in this kind of situation.
And also illegal. I think this is the important thing.
Illegal as well in many cases, so you have to think about that. How can you do that testing? And then last but not least, of course, the performance engineering. How can you make sure that this system that you're building up that has so many integration points, that has so much more expectations from the end user will use it in a totally different way than what they're doing today with your applications. How will that scale? You have to really make sure that it does.
And also there's some of the new challenges. I think we sat there yesterday at another conference where they were talking about wind tunnels. They were talking about actually putting devices through realistic, rotating them.
Exactly, simulating what was really happening in real life. And I think those kind of things are coming up as more challenges.
Absolutely. From a performance engineering point of view, that starts from day one. I think the same we talk about automating early. Yep. We're also talking about performance testing as well, or performance engineering.
Yeah, we talk about engineering.
Engineering.
Right. So, okay, so Jonathan, why don't you try to dive a little bit deeper into those topics?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'd love to.
Okay, cool.
Thank you very much. So, this one's definitely Julie's slide, but as she's not here, I'm just going to flick through it. But I think when you talked about traceability and actually understanding that whole landscape, these are new approaches to actually do this. I don't think the traditional way of doing it. I'm not going to talk about waterfall. I'm not going to talk about agile, safe, dadless, all that
I think
stuff.
it's really about understanding the challenges better and making sure that you use the right kind of tool sets that can help you to be successful. And of course, if you're testing something like an Oracle application, then the Oracle testing tools are probably a smart choice because they have more built-in intelligence into them.
Absolutely, and I think that's where we on the last point there, we're talking about domain tools.
Exactly.
And I think partly what you'll see through these slides is actually I've gone through and I've taken the word test out of it, because part of it is like when I talk about automation. I've spent the last 15 years doing automation, and what I've learned is actually automation has nothing to do with testing. Actually, automation, when we talk about test ops and DevOps, is actually about build. It's about deploy. It's about dev. It's about saving time. It's about becoming lean. Part of that is the backbone, but it's not just a test activity. It's a business activity. And I think this is where we're looking at it in a slightly different way. And where we have to work together, because there's
not them and us. It's like everyone.
It's together as a partnership, a strategic partnership, to actually allow us to go through that transformation journey together. And I think that's really important, because we can help do that support, the resilience testing, the security, all these new challenges which you'll see today in some of the other events. Part of that is focusing on that and coming up with solutions and working together of how we get through those challenges. And I think this is the whole thing. I have to apologise that these slides are from my Gartner presentation last year. But actually, part of when we talk about SV, and I would just literally finished a conversation around service virtualization, is there's lots of integration points. And ironically, the photo on the right-hand side was a cloud map of one of the challenges I had last year, where someone said, okay, we've got 14,000 test database endpoints. It's a large investment bank. Okay. I need to understand the relationship of those. The 4.3 petabytes of test data. These are new challenges. These are new complex ecosystems that businesses have. They're all used to testing them in isolation.
Exactly, and then you also want to get started with the testing early, so you don't want to wait for getting a test environment integration up and running, so you need to have some kind of services virtualization in place.
Absolutely, and it's the dependency. As testers, we're so used to environments being such a challenge, is upstream and downstream data feeds. You know, how many of us have waited for those inputs? Equally, how many of us haven't utilized the output of one system that is the downstream activity for another system or another team? And this is where we talk about enterprise collaboration, and they're working together as teams. It's not silos anymore. They're not tiny little scrum teams. They are global organizations working together for the common good to get to go digital.
Which is another part of the challenge, of course.
Absolutely. So, when I talk about automated early, and I must admit I've jumped on this a few times before, but part of one of those challenges, and I've put a quote in the bottom, which I think Julie actually was the one who coined it, which was the test first delivery approach, which is actually saying you can test the entire platform before it's even been written. And I think this was a really kind of challenging area last year, but it was actually saying we understand how our business works. We know how derivative works. We know how FX is. We know the domain. So why are we waiting for the database to be procured? You know, part of is we understand it's a data model, we understand there's a middleware tier, we don't care if that is one technology or another. We can actually start testing from day one because we understand our business. If anybody does.
And I think that's really the important thing here, to upfront try to understand the challenges that you're up against and try to understand what you need to test instead of, you know, trying to figure that out as you move along.
And if you invest that time up front, then when you do get the application, yes, you'll have automation, you'll have things that start adding you value. And I think that's really important. I think that's what the bit of a change different to what you said. Everyone's talking about it.
Oh, yeah.
Equally, I think, you know, this one's definitely my big one.
Yeah, it's a big one.
You know, part of that challenge of 13,000 test databases and 4.3 petabytes of data is, unfortunately, you do get production of data there. People haven't sanitized it correctly.
Yeah, and I mean, that leads you to a lot of different problems. So one, you mentioned legal problems, obviously.
Absolutely.
So in many countries, it's illegal to use production data for test purposes. And the other thing is, you know, whenever you hear data getting stolen, well, stolen, it's duplicated, really. It's no one that takes it away normally, but they duplicate it. This doesn't really happen from the data centers because they are normally extremely well secured.
Absolutely.
It happens in development or test environments. And if I would like to steal data, well, you know, what would I do? Well, the easiest thing is probably to get a job as, you know, cleaning out the corridors in a company, and then at night just take a screwdriver with me and, you know, copy
I don't think it's as easy as that for a second, but I think one of the important things around this is really saying that we all want that breadth of real data. You know, part of those, I always get the same thing, even when it's gone through some sanitization, is that I want a particular customer who's had a particular age with this amount of account activity, who needs to pay something overdue by X amount of day within this range, for my rules of my test script. So that's the problem.
Oh yeah. Plus then, of course, if you have a SQL query or something like that, it will, of course, be faster or slower depending on the data.
Absolutely. And if it's normalized and it's not cached, and you can find these performance challenges around that.
So much.
I think that's one of we've obviously talking a lot about challenges. I also remember when I first started in the 90s, you know, part of the challenges I had was data prep. You know, part of it, before I ran my automation, I had to prepare all the data, had all these big CSV tables, etc., etc. You know, now we want to start being smart. We want to get the data, we We want to be able to pull it from source. We want to generate it. We want to build it in the environment and have it all seamlessly happen.
Exactly, and I think that, there's a few different products out there for, this data masking or, making sure that the data is not harmful in any way. But most of those products actually lift the data out of the database, mask it, and put it in again. So the Oracle data masking here is, I think, a unique product because it masks and clone in process in the database.
Wow.
So the data never leaves it, so it's, a lot more secure, obviously.
It's like the Netflix of test databases. Right, okay, so let me move on to onto one of the final points, and we're going to try and we've got some demos, which I know if anyone's around, especially if they're in Orlando today,
Yes.
come by the booth, and we'll show you some of these because actually some of this stuff is extremely cool. And we talk about open innovation, some of the joint projects that Oracle have been working with Hitachi. Some of this stuff is fantastic. You see it to believe, and we'll try and get through some of those. But I know time's a constraint. I don't want to hold too many people up. But we talk about environments. We talk about the DevOps-y kind of world, the chef, all that kind of great stuff where you want to be able to build environments on the fly. I would like, which is the whole thing, I'd like £1 billion is what they always say. But I would like an environment with the right data, the right scale for me to do performance on.
And then you go and you want to procure that machinery, and then it's like, okay, it takes weeks.
Yep.
If you get the hardware at all.
Or signed off.
Or you have to repurpose hardware, set it up and all of that. And why don't you use the cloud for that? So, again, Oracle has a lot of different possibilities here with infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or even Java as a service, which I know that you, as a developer heart, kind of enjoy.
And equally, I think even if you look at some of the latest movies, even the superheroes are saying to the Oracle Cloud. I think part of that,
Tony Stark. He actually has a bunch of Exadata and Exalogic machines in his lab, so you can see that in the movies.
Does he have a test bed as well? Because obviously,
I'm sure he
for his
has.
prototypes, he must have.
I'm sure he has.
Absolutely. So definitely using those environments is, and we've talked about this stuff for ages. Testing as a service, test automation as a service, test platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, security testing. It's all stuff we've been talking about. Let's start doing it. Let's start using it. And the thing is, you need organizations that can support you through this journey, that are able to give you what you need on demand and provide you that support. I think it's great.
And the security, of course, and the stability, so... But yeah.
No, that's absolutely, and I think this is the area. I think you noticed if you've gone through the slides, the word test disappeared from quite a few of them. I have to apologise for that. And the second one, engineering, appeared. Agile engineering.
Well, it is an engineering effort, isn't it?
It is an engineering effort. I think you added these lovely cogs in last night. Part of it is actually we are going back to those engineering disciplines. We talk about cloud being terminal services, going back to the old client-server days. Actually, we're coming back to an engineering discipline. I use the word agile engineering, which I know people really like, or don't like. But part of it is we are having to go back to that discipline because these are complex systems.
It is indeed, and it is a lot of effort, and you have to think about this, which means it's getting into engineering. So. Yeah. I think we're on the right track.
I'm really happy about that because I'm an engineer at heart, so I love the idea of getting back to our roots. But I think performance engineering and everything else we've been talking about there is really, really important. You can do this early. I think this is the whole point. The engineering bit to me says start early, have that full traceability all the way through, see the value of what you're doing, continually doing something and expecting the changes.
Well, I think that's really the only way forward, especially in these digital transformation projects, because they're so huge. If you start with the load testing at the very end, kind of waterfallish, then you're doomed.
It's the exact same thing you were talking about for Uber, delivering the platform and then scaling it to 50 odd countries, then having the kind of throughput that you're expecting, the additional traffic coming through, even when we talk about the match. People don't really think about these things.
Because the user experience at the end of the day is really what you're looking for, and if the user experience is bad, if you have a slow app, if you have functions not working, then these customers are gone. They're going to try about 3 times and then they're gone.
Absolutely. So, I think that hopefully that's us, gave you a little bit of overview. We've got some extra slides at the end for some case studies and to make this stuff real. I think it's quite useful.
Yeah, we've been pretty abstract so far, but you can also visit us at booth 39 or 40, so it's a double booth there.
39 and 40.
Yeah, well, depending on how you look at it. But, we are there for the whole conference now, and we're more than happy to engage with you guys. Of course, you guys that are just watching this, it's going to be a little bit more difficult, but, feel free to reach out to us. We're more than happy to work with you later on.
LinkedIn, just drop us an email.
Oh, yeah.
We're always happy to
good.
help, Steph. And I think, so I'm going to do a quick slide on Hitachi.
Yeah.
I'll let you have one. You know, it's like sharing is caring and all that stuff. So partly what I'm going to do is go a little bit around the digital transformation. You know, some of the services that we've started actually providing to real customers. Because obviously, as Hitachi is a global organisation, we provide this internally as externally.
Yeah,
I think,
you really have the capacity of doing that, you know, with
absolutely.
your expertise.
But we're learning from that, and that's really where we're building that service catalogue up to really help customers on that journey to value. And, you know, part of that, I don't want to go into too much sales speak in that side of mode, but, you know, part of that is offering these services that we're talking about and really kind of going through and helping them together, partnering with them more than just providing them services, actually going in there, working out how we can work together on that road plan and that journey to digital.
It is all about that, you know, taking them through this journey, because it is a journey, it's a big, huge project, and being the advisor, helping them, coach them to really go there.
Absolutely, and that's the building services around. And I know obviously Julie's here from, who's more than happy to answer any of the questions as well. But you know, we kind of build things in down to like some of our fundamental products are things like TQA Assure. So building that level of assurance under there. So really building, you know, the processes, the methodologies, all that good stuff to give you the confidence.
And that's really key, I think, also because if you're doing a digital transformation, this is not something that you have done before. This is something that is totally new. And if you want to kind of reinvent the wheels again, that's going to be challenging.
Absolutely, and I literally just flown in from Portland, which I might have already mentioned, just literally on a client site who wanted an assessment. They want to know where they are, what the maturity of their processes are, and look at how we can actually go over time, you know, part of a health check, give them the reassurance that, you know, they're here at the moment, they want to get to this point, but it's a journey. It's not, I keep on using the word, it's evolution, not revolution. It's not bringing in a massive tool and expecting everything to be fantastic. It's actually taking them through that, continuously coaching them, mentoring them, getting them to the point where they're able to deliver it, but also be able to deliver value from it. And I think that's absolutely essential. And I sit in the tech space, as you probably already noticed, and the TQA labs and all that kind of stuff is really providing platforms like Oracle to customers with the relationship that we've got together to actually make that work.
Well, it's you know, you need to have both components, right?
Yep.
So on one hand side, the knowledge, the insight, the understanding to guide you through that journey. And on the other hand, tools that can help you to actually do this smoother and easier. Because at the end of the day, you know, you don't want to spend more time or more effort on this. Use tools that are, you know, helping you instead of preventing you from getting there.
Absolutely, and also I think it's that magic sauce. I know there's lots of consultancies out there, and you know, the part of that helping the clients, which you know is the whole digital transformation piece, is really about bringing the magic sauce in there as well. So stuff that we've learned, we've evolved over time, we've built on proven technologies and approaches to actually allow us to do things like the first day testing, the service virtualization, stuff that really makes it easier for the customer to actually start accelerating with this stuff and getting some value from it.
Oh yeah.
So actually, when we talk about tooling, I'm going to pass you back over to introduce a little bit about the landscape.
Well, yeah, I think that Oracle is not really maybe the number one vendor when you start thinking about testing tools. Even if you look at Gartner and their magical quadrants, you see that Oracle has been there for a large number of years in the top space there in the leaders quadrant, and actually is one of very few, if not the only vendor that actually increased and got a better position over the last 4 years. You will see a lot of things happening with other vendors, but you know, that's enough about that. We have a huge portfolio around application quality management products that can help you to really get where you want to be. So we have everything from application testing products. So these are synthetic testing tools, like the tools that you would find at the other vendors here at STAREast. But the difference here is really that these tools have been geared towards specifically the Oracle applications. So instead of having generic testing tools, we have built testing tools that are geared towards the Oracle applications that gives you the advantage of an intelligence, if you want to call it that, or application awareness, so that we understand how to identify objects in the best possible way, so that you get robust scripts, so that you don't have to put so much time developing the scripts or maintaining them. Or for eBusiness Suite, that we have a keyword-driven testing framework that is included into the product, and that gives you 3,600 pre-built components for testing eBusiness Suite. Something that can help you to reduce the scripting effort dramatically compared to other solutions in the market. We have infrastructure testing solutions, so if you're not updating your applications, but rather your infrastructure. So let's say that you're patching the operating system or you're swapping out, the OS or data, something like that. You can just record everything that happens in production environment, either on an application level or on a database level, and then play it back in a test environment. So you don't have to do any scripting at all. So I think that's very powerful as well. And we talked about the data management parts, so data masking, or I think one thing that is pretty interesting is the snap clone, which is a kind of a virtual cloning. So you can clone terabytes of data in a matter of minutes, and you just consume a fraction of the space. And then, of course, we have, all the different cloud platforms. So I think that in combination gives an extremely broad portfolio that can help you at the end of the day moving forward and making sure that you get to this kind of end goal that you're striving for faster and easier with less pain. Yeah. I think that's what it's all about. And all of these tools that you see on the screen here are tools that we use internally at Oracle as well. So we have about 170 different development teams using these tools. More or less, of course, depending on what it is. And like the Fusion applications testing team, they have over 100,000 test automation scripts. So they run, on every single day, they run 80,000 of those scripts, and that produces over 1.5 terabytes of data in forms of screenshots, log files, reports, and all that, every single day. It's good that we have databases, right?
Absolutely. I think we mentioned at the end around openness. I think one of the reasons that we've been using the Oracle, especially if you've got an Oracle stack, is actually we're able to integrate with other solution integrators to actually build either mobile, because you've got an Oracle BI application, part of it is, it just makes sense. The whole stack is able to, from a database, infrastructure, middleware,
as well as, when you're running the load test, the ability to pull up the diagnostics reports and just see, what problems do you have in the database, and you can also get information on how to fix that. So it's kind of the holy grail for load testing from my point of view.
Absolutely, and the same goes for testing, for automation testing. And when we go into this DevOps, TestOps, these are really going to give you that insight, that actionable insight that will actually do something with the results. Yeah. And like you said, all that 1.5 terabytes with the reporting capability that comes out on debug logs or Java dubs or whatever you want to call it, sorry. And part of that is, I know we've only got 5 minutes left, so what I'm going to do is we'll go through a couple of case studies because I want to see this actually happen.
I think we'll do that to just show that, something can actually come out of this.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay. So I think that kind of concludes the presentation section. Obviously, we're going to go into a couple of case studies. I've only got 5 minutes, so we're going to be nice, quick, and dirty. We're just going to get them out of the way. But part of it, I wanted to take this opportunity to thank everybody who's attended the virtual conference. Obviously,
yeah, it's awesome.
Thanks for staying up. I know these people probably it's different time zones. And also, I edited this slide in literally at the last minute, so you can tell that my paint skills are not quite as good. And sorry, Ray, for taking you out, but obviously this was STAREast, Star West a few years ago, so I just felt like it was necessary. So thank you, Julie, for the introduction. That was fantastic. And hopefully, I usually have an Ask a Jedi, but definitely, if you've got any questions about this stuff, feel free to ping all three of us on the same email. Look at how cool would that be?
That would be cool, but
I'll just direct it all to you. That'd be absolutely fine. So thanks very much for the presentation section. I know we probably got some questions, but I just wanted to show you some quick case studies where I think we've worked together on them in the past as well. But actually, the slide in the middle kind of shows you that we're actually testing on real devices here. So this is an eclipsing kind of environment where we're actually testing mobile devices through one of our strategic partnerships. So actually, last time when we were at the last conference event together, we demonstrated this on the booth. And I think this was really cool to kind of show you that we could go and scale it up to any type of possible device, tablet. I use the word bring your own device, but actually now we're moving into IoT. We're talking about wearables. We're talking, on the right-hand side, we talked about the iWatch earlier, saying actually, you actually want to be able to test with the real device from day one, from when it's available on the 27th. So, part of that is that new exciting challenge. Equally, we talked about open innovation. This was a bit of a snapshot. It was a bit of a discussion we had yesterday. I think you were quite impressed with what happened. We'd formed with a couple of our other partners, and we said, okay, and this was the real power of Oracle, I think, is that Oracle has a tool called Flow Builder. And
which is part of Oracle's functional testing
tool. And what that does is that gives you the blueprint of your entire application. And I know there's or your entire business in a way. If you've got a CRM that's all been configured in there, then instead of you going and learning the entire application, you just go in and pull out the blueprints.
Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of components. I talked about that a little bit earlier. So we have all these different components that are pre-built for you. You can customize them as well if you want to. And components like, logging in, create the purchase order header, create the purchase order line, and what have you. Because they have to help you kickstart you with your automation.
Absolutely. And the whole thing is you can take those business rules, you can take how those CRMs being configured and customized, pull them down, and then run the entire testing against them. And this now integrates straight into mobile, wearables, and also web, the whole stack. So that's a really exciting thing. I think there's actually nearly a little tiny video of this actually happening, whether or not it'll actually play.
So we have our 2 minutes and 9 seconds.
2 minutes and 9 seconds. This lasts 30 seconds, but it just shows you how we've literally pulled down the schematics, automatically generated that flow through the application, and then the tools, which literally they had no integration to mobile, and 2 weeks later we worked with another partner, Perfecto, to actually allow us to go through the entire stack from Oracle Flow Builder into Grid Tools, Agile Designer, and then straight out to actually test it on the real device. And I think this is the future. I know this is also the future, which is we've actually got big data cameras which work out how happy our employees are and collects it and puts it in the cloud and analyzes just how happy we are. So
we are very happy.
We are happy. So I think we've probably got 1 minute and 20 seconds to actually take any questions. I'd like again to thank everybody and open the floor.